If you take your food personally like me, then you need to get on the Thrive food discovery and ordering app. Join the community of foodies on the Thrive feed, where you can curate restaurant lists, ask for recos, and chat about all things food. So download it today and start thriving. Welcome to today's episode of Speak Greasy. My guest is Pritha Sahai, who is the co-founder and creative director of Please See Advertising, a creative agency that has launched some of the country's most buzzy and loved brands. Welcome to the show, Pritha.
Thank you.
You're a podcast virgin, so it's
I mean, I've heard lots, but it's super fun. I'm very excited.
Listen, let's start at the very beginning. What comes first, a brand or the product?
I think you need them both. I think if a product's good, it makes our job much easier. I would say you need a decent product or you need a good idea. And then I think the brand helps it do its job.
In our space, which is F&B and restaurants, you work with a lot of restaurants. Often the product's not out yet when you're working on the branding, right?
So we do a great job.
Sorry?
I said that's when we do a great job beforehand, yeah.
No, but that's the thing that, often the brand gets launched before people actually get to, try the product, right? In the case of a restaurant, for example. So, or even an FMCG product possibly, right? Because you're seeing it advertised everywhere, you're seeing the brand all over, and then you get to try the product, which is why the question of, what really comes first.
I think the challenge is to make that brand super exciting. And I think what we do at Please See is we bring that joy to that product right in the beginning. I think that curiosity, that joy, that excitement is what the brand is doing at an initial stage. But the way I always describe branding is I feel like it's this living thing. And I think that's kind of what we do at Please See is we don't just build a brand for that, hey, it's got to, look good for those 5 seconds, but it's got to have that longevity. So that's why I say they both come together because it's like this continuous sort of interaction that's happening. You have the brand, yes, you will look at it on shelf, you'll be like excited, curious, they'll get you in. But then you want to, the product itself has got to do some talking for me to go back and want it the second time. And I think what we keep doing is that we keep building that excitement continuously, especially in the F&B space.
I think you put it beautifully, actually. The brand has to bring you in and the product will make you stay in a way, right? That's where that, the synergy happens.
Yeah.
Often when you talk about brand, or you think of logos, right? And that's what, that's what brand means to a lot of people. But it's so much more. And, you've come on as, our creative agency as well, where the brand, the logos were there, it's something that's already out there. So what really is a brand?
For me, like I said, it's a living thing. And what you're doing is you're defining kind of personality for how people are going to interact with you. So like you said, a lot of times we inherit brands. So we inherit what it looks like, what it feels like. And a lot of times if people are really close to existing brands, because we are doing a lot of rebrands recently as well, we don't really mess with what that mark looks like. Depending on how it's already been defined, we'll leave it as it is, but we'll just give context to that meaning, right? Like for example, I think Parsi Dairy is a great example of something that we've just done recently. 100 years, legacy, you don't want to mess around with that. Like it's got so much to hold on to. So there were minor tweaks that we had to make. Of course, from a design perspective, you want to hand and, stay true to how you work across mediums, etc. So we look at that aspect of it right at that initial point. But then the part that we spend a lot of time on is actually building that personality for it, because that kind of loses context sometimes with time. So it might not be relevant or as relevant as it was. The products kind of change. And, in this case, when you're talking about product and brand, I think Please See's also been lucky or fortunate enough to be involved at certain stages where we get a chance to be a part of that product also. So when they are coming up with new products, whether it's, from tasting, from, actually having an opinion on some of them, we've been really lucky and fortunate to have those relationships where whoever we're working with has taken us on to be like, yes, be that confidant, be that other person outside of our world that helps us define this better.
So that's definitely, I think, so integral, when you're working with a new product or brand. But, like an example like ours where you've inherited that existing brand, how do you get under the skin of a brand that's been around, that you haven't been part of the process of evolution?
So I'd say there are two things. One is we observe. So that means we'll sit in your restaurant, we'll eat your food, and then this is from a hospitality point of view. We'll actually experience every part of the restaurant. And I often say in the hospitality space is that, just sitting in that space and seeing what's ordered most and what's sizzling around on the table gives you a really good idea. And we start to see it from a very different lens than probably you see it from. Like, we're not looking at numbers. We're looking at what that consumer is coming in to really enjoy and experience. And we're trying to take that away and then build upon that. So the first part is that, which is just sort of, I think, just be in that space and understand as much as we can as a consumer. And then the second thing is, I think we've also been doing this for a while. So I think the 12 years of having been part of this industry has given us a little bit of knowledge to start to make certain decisions and help guide, especially restaurants and hospitality in a certain way.
I mean, you're absolutely right, and I saw you guys do it, and it was actually an incredible. It was a challenging exercise for us as the sort of at the other end, where you, like you said, you're so consumed in the brand that you don't, and you do obviously think of the customer experience and the customer journey, but you sometimes are very set in your ways where you don't actually, you miss a lot, I think, and getting that fresh sort of that fresh perspective, the new set of eyes on something you've been doing, no, it's never autopilot, but it is that it can happen, right?
Yeah, it's the same. I think it'll be the same when you come and look at my business, right? It's like we get so involved in like ops, and especially being entrepreneurs and being in that space, you're like, you're looking at it from a very different lens. And I think the other thing that we've done really well in the F&B space is, I always say, like, Avi and me are not really passionate about food. We enjoy good food, yes, and I think we've grown up with great tables and great food at home, and there was always that indulgent meal that you got when you went out on your birthdays, etc., etc. But food was food, and somehow Tracy, and I think it was a bit of Hunger Inc., a bit of some of the other businesses that we worked in, that really helped us kind of get this name in that industry. What's been fun, the more and more I think about it, and since I am a podcast virgin, I was thinking about it before I came in, and I was like, I think the lens that we look at food and hospitality with is really just the consumer lens. It's about how do I bring joy, which is in very different, whether the joy is like that idea of stringing that cheese, or that joy is, I think we've done some stuff where we've made a whole experience around like the tofu that's going around on a table, or, it's the experience of actually walking into something that's, larger than life. But the idea is to just bring joy to that dining experience. Everyone is going out to enjoy themselves. They're all going out to make, like, I could have eaten that same meal at home, but I'm not doing that. So it's not just about the food. And I think when most restaurateurs come to us, they're so involved in the product and in the food that sometimes they don't look at that lens of why that consumer is constantly coming to me.
I mean, that's an absolutely fair point, that, it's meant to be a special experience, even if it's not a special occasion. It is someone's making that effort to come to your restaurant. And, I always say this about our business, that it's not about just food and beverage, it's about making memories. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you do that? How do you kind of, something that lasts longer than that meal in itself, right? And this is where, I think that there's a big interplay between the product and the branding, and the brand, rather. There's often this dilemma about how far you go with the sort of branding. You also see restaurants around you where, and I know they might be in a different space, but where they just have the product.
But you were one of those restaurants for us. Like, honestly, like if I was to think about it, when I used to think of table, I was like, she's just got it right. You know, you weren't that person who was spending a lot of time on the branding part of it, because your sole aim was to look at it from like, hey, I'm going to give this experience at this level and give a stellar meal, and the memories belong to this space. But I think it was for that type of restaurant, right? I think Table had that. Like, it has that, like...
If you think about, like, a restaurant like, say, a Swati, right?
Yeah.
It's like a Bombay favorite for so many people.
Yeah.
They do have certain elements of brand. Like, if I see that
100%.
yellow plate anywhere on a photograph, I know instantly it's Swati, right? And on that metal table. You know, there's certain things about... You know, even if it's like if I see a picture of a panki, I think Swati, right? Like there are certain elements of that brand that
You can't mess with.
Yeah, you can't mess with. How do you kind of balance between product and brand, and how far do you go in investing in building that brand beyond the product speaking for itself?
Two things about like an example like Swati that I would say. One is that Swati is amazing, but Swati has age on it. Like if something was to open tomorrow, which was, you know, Swati's cousin, whatever, I don't think it would have that brand effect that Swati has today, right? It's because this brand has been built over time. We've all built memories with that brand. And now when it's gone to Nariman Point and it's gone to, you know, various other locations, that yellow plate is now become recognizable. So it's branding at their own level.
So when you're saying like when there's a new, entrant in that space, they don't have the advantage of legacy.
It's more and more crowded, right? This market's becoming like every day there are, I don't have the statistics around it, but I mean, there are a huge number of restaurants. Everyone's selling fried chicken. How are you going to stand out in that market, you know? Everyone's selling a burger. My burger is better than your burger. What are you going to do about that, right? So I think in situations like that, yes, building that brand is really important. But coming back to your point, which was about building those memories, I feel like that's where brand is really special. Because today I'll go to Swati with my sister, my cousins, whatever. The memory is built solely on the food that I've eaten, and that's it. I'm out, right? Or it's the meal that I used to have with my, you know, mother, blah, blah, blah. And I'm having that again. It's nostalgia. But now we don't have that anymore. So if I'm to start to build rituals or start to build customs or start to build, like, that's why I say, like, it's a little bit of personality building that you're building. It's like things that you start to do. Now I'm starting to define that for these brands. Right? Like now I wish to do something with whether it's the kitchen or it's to start to build that space in that consumer's mind that I will keep coming back for this, or there's a certain amount of joy that's related to that, oh, I want to go back for that. So you want to start to build spaces in someone's mind for that occasion, which I think that's where brand is super relevant. And that's where I would keep wanting to do a certain amount of branding for restaurants.
Do you mean that, you know, you don't want someone coming back just for the food anymore?
Yeah, because I mean, you know, like I will keep coming back for a really great steak, right? But beyond that, like there are going to be 12 other steaks that are going to come out tomorrow. So how am I going to define mine versus the other one? Is it just going to be on the fact that it was the first time I had it was really good, or I went with that person and that's why I had it and it was really good? But I have to rely on more than that. And I feel like it makes for a more robust sort of interaction as well. I mean, I have so many references that we can give. Are we good to give?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like whether it's the Dawat with Bombay Canteen, I mean, I think that was a ritual that we built that now is kind of, all of Bombay wants to do it on the 15th of August, right? And it's the idea of building rituals like that for the brand to build memories that would keep having someone come back. I think it's like every time we launch a cocktail book for whoever, any one of our clients, I think that desire or that intrigue that you build within that brand world, it allows the brand to speak at so many different levels apart from the food, right? And I feel like brands have so much more personality than just the food. I can connect with you at so many other levels.
But it takes time to build this, right?
100%, yeah. It takes a long time to build these. And that's why I say it's like, it's not something you switch on and switch off. Because even that logo, right? Like whether it's this, it's every time you have these podcasts and all the different people that you bring on, it's like those conversations that will keep lingering in someone's mind to be like, I have an opinion about this now, right? And I think that's why when I say it's a living thing, it has, it has life in it. We have to keep giving that life to it. So if that life is very singular, then you kind of end up becoming a boring soul that doesn't have much else to. There are different things that you're doing to talk to different people from a food perspective. But I think we forget that the people that are coming to eat there also need to be spoken in different ways, and they need to feel good. Everyone wants to feel good. And it's not just going to happen with like this amazing steak that I have. I love your steak, by the way.
Clearly, I've heard it a few times now. How do you do it with a product, like an F&B product? You work with, you work with Stranger & Sons. So how do you develop an idea for a product that hasn't even hit the market yet, and that you can't see that you can't predict that consumer reaction?
Yeah, I think Stranger & Sons is super fun. Like I would take that to experiences. I think where we started to tell stories with Stranger & Sons was when we started to really build out the experiences, and when people started to come and connect with the product and started to see this universe that we were building for it. Because I think alcohol and the way we built Stranger & Sons was very different from how we were building most other FMCG products. Because I think here being gin, I guess the category, alcohol on its own, the fact that we can't really advertise in India. We had so many challenges that the storytelling had to be really interesting to get someone involved. And we were one of the first gins in the market. So I think we also had that ability to have that first mover's advantage to do something really different. And I think that's what we did with Stranger. So I think it all starts with, for us, it all starts with strategy, hole in the market. So we make those creative leaps and we have that fun. And I think Stranger & Sons was a brand where we really had a lot of fun. It was a lot of storytelling. I think there was an ability to look at India from a very different lens. So it was a lot of India proud and looking at it for a very young consumer in a really interesting way, and really just playing them up and enjoying them and making them more joyful for the consumer. Again, I mean, you drink alcohol only when you're having a good time, unless you're an alcoholic. So it's like, how do we make sure that storytelling comes through? But now I remember, the one thing with Stranger & Sons that I think we did really well was when I say the experiences, I think it's the layering of the experiences. So for Stranger & Sons, everything that we did was we kind of made you put on a hat, which is what we call like this experience where you put on a hat when you walk in. So you kind of drop all your layers before you get into that experience. So whether it was, I think we had done this really fun experience at Soho House right in the beginning when we launched. Did you come for it?
No.
It was, you were thrown around into different rooms and you had to literally find where this final finale of the Stranger & Sons experience was. And when you walked into this, through these various layers, I'm explaining it terribly right now, but through these various layers, when you reached the end, you had this gentleman who was storytelling in this room. So we had written out these beautiful stories for the brand. And then it still required a little bit of guessing as to where this experience was. And it was actually in the bathroom. So there was this amazing bar that was set up in the bathroom. And then you got to just spend X amount of time with strangers in a room. You had no idea who they were. You made new friends. And I thought it was a really cool experience.
That does sound a lot of fun. You've obviously, you mentioned 12 years. I'm sure you've seen the evolution or the importance being given to digital over these 12 years. I know when we launched our brand, there was no Instagram for the first 3. So, it was very much, I don't even think we had a website, or maybe we did. But it was very much about the on-ground, the offline experience, we say now. How would you kind of divide the importance between digital and offline, especially in the F&B space?
Offline trumps all. Like, there's nothing like holding something in your hand, tasting it, feeling it. Like, I think just as human beings, our senses need to be evoked. And I think that happens when you're offline. I think online does a great job of telling everybody what to do. So I think it's a tool. It's a tool for communication. I mean, it was great. I knew you were in Goa last weekend. I would have never known these things, right? So I think there's a tool. It's used as a tool to just make sure that information is dispersed really well and quickly. So you just have to make sure that you use it for that potential. But there's nothing like holding, feeling, touching, eating, hearing, smelling. Like, you can't take those away.
What should a new restaurateur be thinking about when trying to establish a brand?
I feel like there's a beauty in simplicity. And I think when we overcomplicate things and we make them too cerebral sometimes, we lose a lot of people. So while being a creative person as well, I totally appreciate where it's coming from. But I feel like sometimes when you want to talk to a larger audience, you got to talk to them. And, you got to pull out those nuggets. And that's our job, really, is to pull those nuggets as to what do I really want to say out of everything that you're talking to me about, to help make it more digestible.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense that, I might have like 50 things that I'm trying to communicate, but what are those actual few things that as a consumer is going to care about?
And memory, right? You want to, like, no one's, if I give you a whole spiel or I give you a whole paragraph of what I'm going to do, you're not going to remember it. But if I kind of like dial that down to something that's really easy, that makes it for someone to be able to recreate, talk about, hold on to, like, what is that lowest common denominator kind of, but there's a little bit of edge, I guess, because, unless you just feel like, just doing what you like, making that burger is your thing, then make that burger. I feel like I'm a full believer of honesty in like your craft, your work, your, like, as soon as you're adding fluff and you're adding layers on top of it, it's just, you're going further and further away from what you're really good at, and then that gap becomes hard. So if you're aware of that gap and you know how to tackle it, amazing. But if you don't, then simplicity is what I would say, because I feel like a lot of people get it wrong.
Go back to basics, yeah. Have you ever turned down a client?
Yeah.
So what would be? I mean, I'm not talking about like monetary sort of aspects, but like what to you doesn't work?
Like, I feel like when there's a lot of fluff, and I feel like when there's not that honesty isn't there, or I don't really believe in what they're doing, or they haven't thought through their product enough. Like, if you're not fully motivated to get it right, sometimes I question why I should be getting it right for you, right? Like, I'm here to only guide your business and help it. And I feel like the way we work with most of our clients, we're fully invested. I don't think we leave any corners cut. So unless you're fully invested, I don't know why I should be. So those are possibly the only times when, and it's a full debate. Like, we don't let go of anything really easily. And there'll be a few people involved in that debate. But yeah, I feel like it's the same amount of passion, enthusiasm, clarity that you bring to the table. And it's okay if you're not super clear about it either. That's for me to help you with. I'm okay with taking on that role. But I think that the energy has to match in some way. Yeah.
That makes sense. What are some of the challenges you faced, working with brands, whether it's F&B or otherwise?
I think my challenges from a brand lens are more in terms of breaking down my process so it's easily understood to you, and kind of getting you to see it from that different lens, right? Like, because I feel like sometimes actually that's another point, which I think people come to us and they think we've got this immediate sort of, like, we'll do this tomorrow and, it's going to change everything. And like you said earlier, it takes time to build a brand. It doesn't happen overnight, and you know this more than anybody else. I think it's just that constant hard work, and it's not some magic light we're switching on. So sometimes people don't see those immediate results and start to question it. But then once they start to see how that over time has built this, incredible sort of experience and people are coming back for it, then they're like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, I think that's, I think that's fair to say that. And I'll be honest, when we started our restaurant, at least the first restaurant, I don't think I was thinking through this at all. I mean, yes, like I said, I was very sort of, it was that thing of like, okay, we need a logo, we need a, business cards, we need, whatever, the menu design. As far as I remember, it was not something that we really thought through because, to be honest, a lot of it evolved once the business started, right?
And it's true, and I would say that to most people. I think with branding F&B, I would say let it. You got to do this slowly. You got to understand what's working at your end, and I think you did it the right way. I think you did it the right way with kind of just that's what everybody understood of branding 12 years ago. It's a good thing people understand branding more now. But yeah, I think now it's become different, right? And I think your challenges have become different. In 12 years, you were, you just doing what you were doing was fine. Today, A, there are a lot of other restaurants in that same space. B, the consumer that you were talking to is now exposed to so much more. So, how are you upping that experience? What are you bringing to the table there? See, that those consumers are also now, it's probably their kids that are coming, right? Like, how are you making it relevant to them? Which is, they have this nostalgia for coming there. But I think so that the challenges keep changing for you as a brand because it's no longer just establishing who you are. It's more like you have to make yourself feel as special as you were when you opened out 12 years ago.
That's the thing, that you can, just like with your menu, you can't just sit and say that, well, people have always loved this, so I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to sit on this menu. You do have to keep evolving, especially over a period of time to keep, like you brought up Parsi Dairy and I was talking to them about it, that today they're appealing to a generation that does not have nostalgia associated with that brand because they've been born into a world where there's like 50 options to them. So they don't have that loyalty to any one brand. And how do you kind of connect with them is, I think, we all have to be thinking about that, and especially as we're sort of lucky enough to be around longer.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I feel like just food habits have changed, right? There's so many people that are eating differently today. Like, wellness has become a big part of the conversation. And that can be joyful as well. And don't get me wrong.
You obviously, are doing sort of the creative aspect day in and day out. What do you do when you just have those blocks and you can't get your head around it? I mean, I know you have a big team and things, but like personally...
I garden. I puzzle. I run a lot. I spend a lot of time with my daughter.
And that opens up...
Yeah, I some of the best ideas actually are through children's books. I want to say, like, you oftentimes feel like, you're going through motherhood and how am I going to manage, work. And I think I'm really lucky to be in a creative field because a lot of parenthood made you pay attention to things you wouldn't have normally, right? And I think it made you a child inside, or it made you observe things very differently. And I think we brought a lot of that back into work. So it's very often, even today, I have a lot of children's books in the office, whether it's the way they explain things. We've used them for cocktail menus. We've used them for, there was this really beautiful book that I had, which was an illustrated book. And that's actually where the filters for Stranger and Sons came. So there was it had a red and blue filter. And, it was like you had to find all these animals in this beautiful illustration. So you had to put on this filter to find the animals between that. So it was like and I bought it in, and, the team was just looking through some of that stuff. And they were like, oh, we want to build this experience for Stranger and Sons with their menu, because they were doing these Gibsons and gimlets. And they did it with that same thought process. So I think it just helps you think differently. And the other day was someone on my team, so it's not me, but someone on my team was stuck and frustrated. And I know she had it. Like, I knew she knew what she needed to do. But you know that when you're in the creative process and it's like that, those final maybe like 5 hours before your presentation, you're trying to like, you know, it needs to get to a certain point, but you're doubting yourself. And I think it's in everything, right? Like, a lot of us doubt ourselves from here to that finish line. And then everyone else starts to try and fill in that gap. So like someone saying this, someone saying this. But she knew the answer. So I just took her away, and I have Lego in my office as well. So I said, get off your computer, come sit upstairs with me. And I just made her make something. So it was a little bit mindless because there was a book in front of her and she was just, you know, doing what that made her do. But it was changing the act and just getting away from that. And I said, talk to me as to what you want to do. And she went through a process, and I think she did a great job. So I think a lot of times it's just to change what you're doing and kind of look at it from a different lens. So kind of really think about what your inner thought is. And that's what running does. I think that's what just doing things that are outside of what you're doing, help you do.
I agree. I mean, I know that our Sunday bake sale that used to happen at the table before we opened the cafe came out of taking my daughter to Swati, which I clearly love, on a Sunday morning for the jalebi run. And I was like, if people are lining up for jalebis in their pajamas at whatever, 7 a.m. or 7:30 a.m., like, I'm sure they'll do it for like fresh hot croissants. So,
and we did.
That's literally like how the idea was as
But I think that's where the ideas come, right? I think that we've had the best ideas that have come out of like just observation, right? And it's observation in a almost like alternative sort of thought process. So it's not if you're just sitting at your table and trying to find the answer to this, I don't think it's going to happen. But I think it's when you get out of that role and you're doing something else, but thinking about what you want, you kind of find that answer much faster.
I became a mother sort of a few years into running the restaurant, and a lot of what we've done right here in the kitchen has come out of me being like, okay, I need to keep my kid busy, and you know, that's where ideas come from, which I probably wouldn't have thought of, and most of my marketing team does not think of, because they're not yet mums or or parents rather, and it's true that a lot of it just comes from
I feel really lucky
outside of work.
And I feel really lucky that I guess our businesses allow us to incorporate all of this in, because I feel like I would hate not working. Like, I feel like it gives me a lot of purpose in my life. And I think just having something to do every day is amazing. So I hope we keep having something to do every day. But I love that everything else can carry on.
Okay, so we've come to the fun bit where I don't know if you have prepared this, but you're supposed to tell us 3 things, and 2 truths and a lie, and I try and pick out the lie.
I got a baby calf for my 8th birthday called Mui. I had a little mongoose called Merlot, and I had a little rabbit called Thumper.
I love the animal theme going here with okay, this is I'm gonna go with the mongoose being the lie, because that is not one that's usually welcomed home by any parent, any loving parent. That was fun, and thank you so much for taking the time out and shedding some light on life beyond logos.
Yay! We did this. Thank you very much.